أهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من بالمصري. Welcome to a new episode of بالمصري. رمضان كريم، كل سنة وانتم طيبين. Ramadan started a few days ago, and on this occasion I'm going to be reading excerpts from childhood memories of Egyptian writers of the month of Ramadan, how they used to celebrate it, and how things changed since then. I'm going to introduce each excerpt briefly, and then after reading the excerpt I'm going to make a few small comments on the language. And today I want to focus on small particles, connectors, and also a few verbs, maybe here and there, that are very commonly used in Egyptian Arabic. All excerpts are taken from 2 newspaper articles, so it's possible that all these quotes were originally spoken, not written, and they would have been spoken in Egyptian Arabic and then translated, so to speak, into Fusha. And now I've kind of translated them back into Egyptian Arabic, and very likely I have not used the same words as the writers did originally. So, let's get started. The first quote is by an Egyptian poet called Hassan Talab. In the quote he describes his childhood memories in a village in Upper Egypt, قرية صعيدية, where they had no other means of entertainment and luxury except for the radio, where they would listen to ألف ليلة وليلة, a very popular series back in the day, and where the greatest pleasure came from competing with other children over who would complete the fast, like the grown-ups. And then they would eat khoshef, that is compote made from dried fruits, and then perform the Salat al-Tarawih, that is the late night prayers, Salat al-Tarawih, and then listen to the readings of epic poems, which are called As-Siyar al-Sha'biyya, singular As-Sira al-Sha'biyya. And these are epic poems that used to be read to children. The example given here is that of Antara ibn Shaddad. In the end, he bemoans how nowadays Ramadan has become commercialized. It's become all about consumption, istihlak. Anyway, let's begin. أنا ابن بيئة صعيدية من قرية في مركز طهطة، وهي قرية ما فيهاش أي مظاهر للترف والترفيه. الأطفال كانوا بيستنوا الشهر ده عشان يعندوا نفسهم ويصوموا مع الكبار، وكانت فرحتهم كبيرة وقت الفطار لما ياكلوا الخشاف المكون من حتت بلح في مية بس. بعد الفطار كنا نسمع الراديو ونستمتع ببابا شارو وحلقات ألف ليلة وليلة اللي كانت حلم بننتظره بحماس، ففضلت محفورة في ذاكرتنا. بعد صلاة التراويح تبتدي تقاليد تانية، وهي قراية السير الشعبية زي سيرة عنترة بن شداد، وكان والدي هو اللي بيقراها. بعد ما انتقلت للمدينة بقيت أحس بالغربة، لأن بهجة الشهر الكريم اتحولت لنزعة استهلاكية. Okay, a few words I want to focus on here. Firstly, I wanted to point out that the verb انتظر, to wait, and also to expect, to await, can be said in 2 different ways in Egyptian Arabic. We can either say ينتظر, just like the Fusha, just pronounced a bit differently, ينتظر, and also يستنى, يستنى. And in this paragraph, in this passage, I have used both. So I said بيستنوا الشهر ده, but then I said حلم بننتظره بحماس. So you could say يستنى is more colloquial, is more common. If I wanted to tell someone to wait, I would just say استنى. I wouldn't say انتظر. But in the sense of to expect something, to await something, we often say ينتظر, or أنا في انتظار something, I'm expecting something. In the first paragraph, I said that the khoshef consisted of حتت بلح في مية بس. حتت بلح في مية بس. In Fusha, that was قطع البلح في الماء فقط. The word for only in Egyptian Arabic is a very common word, بس. بس. And حتت is the plural of حتة, which is قطعة, a piece. So just pieces of date in water. In the second paragraph, we had the little particle زي. قراية السير الشعبية زي سيرة عنترة بن شداد. زي is the Egyptian word for مثل, or ka, that is like, such as. So the epic poems like those of Antara ibn Shaddad. two very common verbs that occur in this passage is فضل. So we had the radio series where like a dream that we expected, and فضلت محفورة في ذاكرتنا. They remained ingrained in our memories. فضلت محفورة. In فصحى, that is ظلت محفورة. The second verb is بقى. Both فضل and بقى come from فصحى. So بقي is to remain, and in Egyptian Arabic we use it to mean become. So in فصحى we had بعد الانتقال إلى المدينة أصبحت أشعر. In Egyptian, بعد ما انتقلت للمدينة بقيت أحس بالغربة. So بقي, which means to remain, is more commonly used in the sense of to become in Egyptian Arabic. And for to remain, we say فضل, as in the previous passage. The next quote comes from the poet Ahmad al-Shihawi. In this passage, again, it is all about how the move to Cairo from his little village changed his perception of Ramadan and how much Ramadan meant to him in his childhood. من ساعة ما جيت القاهرة ما حسيتش بشهر رمضان وما بقاش نفس الشهر اللي كنا بنستناه وإحنا صغيرين. الشهر الخاص الفريد بطقوسه وتقاليده في قريتنا الصغيرة كفر الميسرة. المظاهر اللي عشتها في طفولتي وصبايا وجزء من شبابي فضلت محفورة في ذاكرتي. لكن طول السنين اللي عشتها في القاهرة الشهر بيهل من غير ما أحس بالفرحة دي. Very similar vocabulary to the previous passage. So we said that بقى means to become. When we negate that, ما بقاش, it means it is no longer. ما بقاش نفس الشهر اللي كنا بنستناه. It's no longer the month that we used to expect. ما بقاش. And here again we have the verb نستنى, بنستناه. Then we have again the expression فضل. فضلت محفورة في ذاكرتي. فضلت محفورة في ذاكرتي. Again, it remained ingrained in my memory, just like the previous writer says. Another expression I want to highlight is at the very start of this passage, من ساعة ما جيت القاهرة. Literally, from the hour in which I arrived to Cairo. And that just means since I arrived in Cairo. من ساعة ما. من ساعة ما ابتدى الفيلم. Since the film began. من ساعة ما. In فصحى, it's the very short منذ. And in Egyptian Arabic, من ساعة ما. A similar expression at the very end of this passage is من غير ما. من غير ما. الشهر بيهل من غير ما أحس بالفرحة. The month comes without me feeling this joy. In فصحى, this would be دون أن أشعر. The next writer is Sakina Fuad, and she again speaks of her memories with the radio show and how nowadays it's just become all about the competition between TV series, because if you've spent Ramadan in any Arab country, you will know that TV series is what Ramadan is all about for many people. So once they've broken their fast, it's just one TV series after the other. So anyway, Sakina Fuad. الذكريات عندي مرتبطة بمدينة البحر بورسعيد. الراديو كان سيد الليالي الرمضانية. الكل كان بينتظر حلقات ألف ليلة وليلة وحلقات أحسن القصص. اللي بيفزعني دلوقتي هو إن رمضان بقى شهر سباق المسلسلات التلفزيونية، وده بيعني تكريس الانفصال والعزلة بدل التواصل الإنساني. So she's saying that what the Ramadan series does is reinforce isolation rather than human interaction. So on one hand, الانفصال والعزلة, separation and isolation, and on the other hand, التواصل الإنساني, human interaction. Here again she uses the verb بينتظر. كنا بننتظر حلقات ألف ليلة وليلة. We used to expect these radio series. And now Ramadan بقى شهر سباق المسلسلات التلفزيونية, has become the month of the competition between TV series. The next passage is from the poet Fatma Naout, and she's the first one to mention فوانيس Ramadan. Fanus, plural فوانيس, is the lantern made out of cheap metal, and in it children would put a candle and they would walk around their streets singing the songs Wahawi ya Wahawi Ayyuha. And what Fatma says in this passage is how the smell of candles immediately comes into her nose every time she hears the Ramadan call for Maghrib prayers. And the other thing she mentions is how she as a child used to ask the adults what Wahawi ya Wahawi Ayyuha means, and they would just be stumped and not know what to say because nobody really knows. And actually the words Wahawi ya Wahawi Ayyuha, apparently they come from ancient Egypt, but there's no real confirmation of this fact. Anyway, فاطمة نعوت. كل ما يحل رمضان وكل ما اسمع صوت الشيخ محمد رفعت بيأذن لصلاة المغرب لازم أشم ريحة الشموع البيضة الجميلة اللي كنا بنحطها في الفانوس أبو شرايح الإزاز الملون، وكنا بنطلع وننزل بيه على سلم العمارة ونغني مع أطفال الجيران وحوي يا وحوي أيوحة. وطبعا ما تسألنيش عن معنى الكلمات دي اللي كنت كتير أسأل الكبار عن معناها فيبتسموا ابتسامة دهشة وما يعرفوش يردوا. I want to highlight one little word in this passage, a word that you obviously know already, and that is the word Abu. Abu means the father of, so you know it in the names of people, and you would also say Muhammad Abu Fatma, for example. But here she says الفانوس أبو شرايح الإزاز, the lantern with the glass panes. In Fusha, what it says is الفانوس ذو شرائح الزجاج, ذو, so which has glass panes. The Arabic Abu is often used in this context. For example, I could say البنت شعر بني, the girl with the brown hair. Literally, the girl, the mother of the brown hair. Obviously, that doesn't make sense at all. Or البيت أبو شبابيك كبيرة, the house with the big windows. So here we have الفانوس أبو شرايح الإزاز الملون, the lantern with the colored glass. In the final passage, we have the writer Gamal al-Ghitani. Gamal al-Ghitani grew up in Cairo, and he has a different view of Ramadan in Cairo because it doesn't seem to be so much a difference between villages and big cities, but more the difference between the past and the present, and also the difference between more popular, less posh areas and the more posh areas, because in the posh parts of Cairo, you would not see the sort of celebrations that you see in the more popular areas. So Gamal al-Ghitani grew up in the Gamaliya district, which has also become popularized through the great writer Naguib Mahfouz. His writings about his childhood are all about this Gamaliya district as well. And Gamal al-Ghitani also speaks of the fawanis, the lanterns, but he's also the first one to mention Matfa al-Iftar, Matfa, the cannon, the Ramadan Iftar canon. This is a tradition that started out in Egypt and has spread to other Arab countries, and that is to have a cannon loudly announce the sunset. So even nowadays, people have the TV on and they wait for the sound of the cannon to announce that it's sunset and now it's okay to eat. Another thing Gamal al-Ghitani mentions is Mawa'id al-Rahman. Mawa'id is the plural of Ma'ida. In Egyptian Arabic, we would say tarabeza for table, but this term, Mawa'id al-Rahman, is a very specific term. Mawa'id al-Rahman literally means the tables of the merciful, and they're usually sponsored by mosques, volunteers, rich people, restaurants, whoever wants to provide Ma'idat al-Rahman, they can. And they offer food to any poor people or passers-by. Abir Sabil is someone who's passing by, who may not have the means to provide for themselves and for their families, so they go to Mawa'id al-Rahman and have their fitar there. So جمال الغيطاني دايما بفتكر مشهد وقوفي مع عدد كبير من الأطفال في شارعنا في حي الجمالية وإحنا مستنيين نسمع مدفع الإفطار عشان نجري نفطر في بيوتنا. موائد الرحمن المنصوبة في شوارع وحواري الجمالية كانت في انتظار كل فقير أو عابر سبيل ممكن يعدي في الوقت ده. وبعد الفطار كان أطفال الحي يتجمعوا وكل واحد منهم يشيل فانوسه وجواه شمعة منورة ونبتدي نلف في الحي وإحنا بنغني وحوي يا وحوي. Okay, so that's all the reading for today. One final comment on the language. I've already commented on how the verb انتظر, for example, has sometimes been Egyptianized into استنى or انتظر. And in Gamal al-Ghatani's text as well, we had انتظارا لسماع مدفع الإفطار. I turned into وإحنا مستنيين نسمع مدفع الإفطار, as we waited to. And then further down, he says تنتظر كل فقير. And that I Egyptianized into في انتظار كل فقير. So what I want to say here is that a lot of times when we choose to say certain Egyptian words, it is our very personal choice, very specifically for that context. And another person might choose to say a different word which may be closer or not closer to the Fusha word. And so, for example, in Gamal al-Ghatani's text, he starts out by saying أتذكر دائما, I always remember, and that I changed to بفتكر دائما, دائما بفتكر. If I had said أنا دائما بتذكر, it would have sounded a bit too Fusha, but still it wouldn't be so unusual that an Egyptian would not know how to deal with it. Another example in the same text, in the middle of the text, he says يمكن أن يمر في ذلك الوقت, he may pass at that time. And for that I said ممكن يعدي في الوقت ده. So to pass, مرة, I changed to يعدي, عدى. If I had said ممكن يمر في الوقت ده, that would have been perfectly acceptable. So what I want to say is a lot of times you can use words in Fusha and they would sound perfectly fine in an Egyptian text, even if most Egyptians would choose to say a different word, like يعدي for to pass. Okay, that was an extra long episode. I hope you found it interesting and not too boring. And I'll see you in the next episode of بالمصري. إلى اللقاء في حلقة جديدة من بالمصري.